Just a little background on myself. I'm a 5-foot, 100-pound, 20-year-old female, and I live very close to my city's worst neighborhood. This happened back in November. I had just finished work and took the bus home like every closing shift. I always walk through my local park as my home is really close to it. It was around 5:30 p.m. I live in Canada, and in the winter it starts getting really dark during this time. And the lights were on, but it was still dark out. I proceeded to walk as nobody was there, and I enjoy my alone time, especially while walking. I had my AirPods on blast, but I decided to lower the volume because I noticed a figure walking to my right. Mind you, I was walking on a path under the lights, but this person was literally under the trees, where it was dark and hidden. I personally wasn't too scared. I just thought, why? I kept glancing as he was walking the same speed. It was like he was trying to catch up with me. As I was near the exit, he turned and came walking directly at me. It turned out to be a guy dressed in all black, wearing a black face mask and had his hoodie on. He ended up passing by me and we both met each other's eyes. What really freaks me out is that I never have seen anybody the moment I walked into the park. It was dead, and I really don't walk through there if I see people. I noticed that one of my neighbors was standing outside of his house. I figured maybe this guy had realized and decided to pass by me because if he had attacked me, I could have screamed and alerted my neighbor. I always think if my neighbor wasn't there, that dude would have made a move on me. Once I got out, I turned around to see if the guy was still there, but he was no longer in sight. That really freaked me out. So I sped walked while making sure nobody was behind me, because my home is visible once you exit the park. After this strange encounter, I stopped walking through the park when it gets dark, and I now keep pepper spray on me. I have been debating on posting this, not because I've been scared, but simply because this is my first time ever talking about it online. Please forgive my writing, as sometimes my wording and punctuation could be better. I'll start off by explaining the area so you can get a good picture of where this occurred. We lived in a small neighborhood. All of these surrounding streets dead end into a half-circle park. Behind the park are some woods and a railroad track. When we were younger, we all played in the front part of the woods, and we never ventured too far back. This was our play area for years. Never had an issue or a scare. This area was a pretty and well-lit wooded area. Anyhow, one day my brother Jimmy and my best friend Sarah and my brother's best friend Ian were all building a dam in the middle of a small creek that ran through the park and the woods. The boys decided that they were going to head back to Ian's house for some snacks. Sarah and I said that we would stay and finish our camp area. As we are moving rocks around, I get a very odd feeling coming over me. A strange feeling that we're being watched. I immediately think that it's the boys trying to scare us, and I just continue with what we're doing. Sarah and I load up some big rocks and head back to the creek and put them down at the dam. I get that feeling again as I stand up and I see something straight in front of me about 30 feet away. I can't clearly make out what it is yet because it is behind a bush, but I do see that it is a pattern of red and blue. I know that's nothing the boys had on, so at this point I'm focusing trying to figure out what it is. As I'm scanning up the bush, I start to realize that it's a clown. I kid you not, my heart started pounding immediately. The clown and my eyes lock. He was wearing a blue and red hat with a reverse pattern red and blue jumpsuit. I grab Sarah's shirt and immediately pull her upright, and she notices the man right away. He is smiling with a face full of makeup and has a huge knife. We both say nothing and start running as fast as our legs can take us. He begins to follow. We can hear twigs snapping and the ground crunching, but we are booking it. We run through the front of the woods, through the side of the park, and up her dead-end street. Ian and Jimmy are 2 houses up from the end, and they see us running and screaming what is going on. While running past, we scream a clown and they just start laughing. We are still running and screaming for our lives, and finally we make it to the middle of the street where Sarah's dad, Danny, is running out of the front door because he heard us screaming. We meet Danny right at the beginning of the neighbor's house, and we're trying to explain what we've seen, and he says, "Oh girls, stop it now. This is ridiculous. What are you talking about?" We try to catch our breath. By this time, Jimmy and Ian have caught up to us. We are crying and pointing and telling Danny again that we saw a clown and a knife. Jimmy and Ian are laughing, and Danny is asking if they played a prank on us. About this time, an old yellow Pinto-type car comes from the dead end at the park and pulls right up next to the sidewalk of the yard that we are in. And sure enough, plain as day, it's the clown. No hat this time, but knife in hand and telling us to come here. And Danny starts shoving us all toward the house, and he himself is scared and running now. The car drives off down the street. We get inside and Danny calls the police. We had to give statements, and the police patrolled the neighborhood and the park for a few weeks after that. We were never allowed to go in the park again, and a few months after that, the city started to clear out the woods. They cut down many trees and made a walking area that you could see through all the way to the train tracks. My friend and I used to talk about this many times up until her death. No one would believe us had they not seen it as well. It was just so scary. I think they only got to see him because whoever it was had to go down the dead-end street to leave the neighborhood. Either way, this man was not afraid of us nor the small group of people that gathered from our screaming. He was very bravely stopped right in front of us as her father tried to comfort us and calm us down, all the while flashing his knife. We're lucky to be alive, I feel. Had it just been one of us left in the woods, which sometimes occurred, I don't think there would have been a group of 4 of us any longer. Sarah's dad has stopped drinking that day, and we all have a fear of clowns. So, I'm trans and I'm not in a safe place to transition yet. I try to dress as masculine as possible, and I have off days due to my anxiety, fear of people, and depression, where I just throw on whatever and try to avoid the world. I don't do dresses or skirts to show off my body, nor do I do anything with my hair. I don't wear makeup or dress up to draw attention to myself. I do have a very soft face and I'm overweight, and obviously I look exhausted due to a lack of sleep, and I'm also very short. This happened on a very off day for me, but adulting happens and I had to go to the bank. I had no one to come with me, and I couldn't take my ESA to the bank because of the weather, and because they do not have the same rights as a service dog. I had taken my prescription to calm me down a little before leaving, but it only helped so much. There was an older bald guy at the bank, and I thought nothing of him as I was in my own little ball of anxiety. He looked Middle Eastern because of his features and his tan, and he was dressed in a nice suit. As I was waiting for the tellers to let me into the main building, he nicely pointed out the newly installed button to be let in, and I thanked him, thinking that was it. I went about my business, I deposited my check, and I was feeling alright. I didn't see anyone outside, and I stepped out into the ATM hallway for a quick withdrawal. And I turned around and he was right behind me, waiting by the main exit. I could have taken the side exit or gone back in, but I thought that I was being silly. Nope. "Hi, my name is Redacted. What's your name?" "I'm A. Thanks for your help earlier." Bear in mind that this conversation was in French, and I have a stutter that grew worse and worse over the space of the conversation. I also tend to be visibly frightened when approached. "You're welcome. You're very beautiful. Can I have your number?" No thank you. I don't like to speak on the phone. I have anxiety." "Come on, just give me your number." "I'm sorry, I don't want to. I have an anxiety disorder." "Well, that's okay. Just give me your number." This was getting to be too much for me. I moved to the door and he kept pressuring me to give him my number. No matter how much I apologized or tried to get out of it, he kept talking to me. Eventually, I gave it to him out of pure panic to get away, but by some stroke of luck, he misheard me because of my stutter. He read it back to me and asked me to repeat the number, and I went with it. He finally bid me a good day and left, reassuring me that he had phoned me at 6. At this point, I thought that I was home free. I didn't live far from the bank, and I walked up a one-way street into an alley off the main street to try and avoid him. There were huge planters blocking traffic going up, so I thought that I was safe. Just as I stepped out, I heard a car rumbling through and a large white van with tinted windows sped through. On the opposite side of the alley was another one-way street leading in the opposite direction. The van nearly collided with the car going the right way up. I had been waiting for that car to pass to get in a pedestrian-only laneway across the street, so I quickly jumped back on the sidewalk. The van honked, turned around, and pulled up in front of me, blocking my way. The tinted windows rolled down and, "Hi, A, get in the car, I'll drive you home." It had begun to drizzle, but I was 2.5 blocks from home and visibly scared of him. "No thanks, I don't have to go far." "Come on, get in." This went on until he seemed to grow tired of it. He left after reassuring me again that he would call me. I was wary and I took the sidewalks this time, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a white car at the end of the block. I figured that he was just trying to get out of this little borough and kept walking, but it didn't make sense. I had been walking slowly and he should have been out of the borough by then. The next block, the same thing, and he was still there, following me along a street going the same way. My block was the last one that you can drive down before having to turn onto a main road, but the street that I was on went 1 block further. I ignored my turn. A gut feeling told me to keep going. I called my brother at the end of that block, mostly hidden by a big tree. I watched my street and asked him if the white van was there. As I was standing, his van slowly rolled into view at the intersection. If I had gone up my block, he would have seen me on my way back down the street. But somehow he didn't notice me, and I stood there quietly making sure he wasn't making another round. He didn't, and I made it home safe and sound, but very shaken up. I never received a call from him. I was about 7 years old and my brother was about 10. It was well past our bedtime when our mom woke up off the couch to put us to bed. Our dad worked construction out of town back then, so it was often just us 3 at the house for weeks at a time. Up the stairs and to the immediate right was our parents' bedroom. Going left put you in the middle of a hallway. Taking another left down that hallway led to my brother's room. The opposite end was my room, which was also across the hall from our upstairs bathroom. At either end of the hallway are windowed doors we always kept locked and rarely used. The door on my end led to a balcony overlooking our front yard, and the door on my brother's end opened to our back porch. The house kind of leaned into a small hill. My brother and mom both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way to his room and came back towards the bathroom. "I'm gonna try to pee before I go to bed. The past few nights I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. I keep seeing a man wearing stripes at the end of the hallway." I don't know if my mom wrote it off as my brother telling ghost stories to try to scare me, or if she was already half asleep and didn't catch it, but she didn't react at all to my brother's confession. I, on the other hand, was terrified by it. The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason that I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. Years later, when I was about 18, my mom and I were having a conversation in her car about a dog that we had for a very short time when I was little. We were sharing stories about Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mom blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big old bag of dog food that we had?" This really caught me by surprise because in all the years that I lived in that house, we had never once called the cops. A gun owner family in a quiet rural West Virginia neighborhood, etc. I asked her what she was talking about and she looked equally surprised, as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time. One night I woke up to hearing noises outside my window, and when I looked I saw a man staring into my bedroom. She went on to describe how turning on the lights caused him to take off running, and how she grabbed my dad's pistol before calling the cops. I can't remember all the details that I gave them when they showed up. A tall white male wearing a striped shirt and jeans, short dark hair, something like that. They said it matched the description of a man that they were looking for in the area. It turns out that he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now I know it sounds so obvious hearing those two stories back to back, but it wasn't until a few years ago in my mid-20s that I pieced together that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our home. First, some background. I'm a 22-year-old college senior about to graduate and start medical school in the fall. This happened when I was in elementary school, some over a decade ago. Over the summer way back then, my mom sent me to YMCA summer camp. I enjoyed going in every day and hanging out with all my friends from school who also went to the camp, but I especially loved one of the counselors, Mike. Mike was always sitting in the same spot when I got dropped off in the morning, and he would see me walk in and put a huge smile on his face. We would always sit there and play cards or some other board game in the morning while all the other kids were arriving. Once the day's scheduled activities started, Mike would always be the counselor in charge of my group. He would always be just close to me. As a kid, I didn't know that was weird. I really liked him, as I said, as I thought that he was a really cool guy as an 8-year-old. Fast forward a couple of years, and I don't remember the exact timeline. My mom and my younger sister and I were out at a state park in the area, about a half hour away from where we lived. We had just gone down there to hang out for the day, and we had a great time in the playground, walking around the trails, etc., and then we head back to the car. When we arrived back at the car, my mom was getting my sister all strapped in and ready for the ride home, and I was getting situated in the back seat as well. Now, our car was in the parking lot, obviously, and there weren't really a ton of people at the park that day, and the lot was pretty empty. So when I noticed that there was a car parked right next to our car, I was like, that's weird. But again, I was a kid and I didn't really think anything of it. Why would this car park literally right next to us when I can see 50 empty spots from right here? Anyway, my mom was getting my sister and I all ready for the trip back home, as I said. Suddenly, the driver door of the other car opens and out pops Mike. My mom recognized him, so she just said, "Hi," and continued going back to what she was doing. Mike says, "Do you mind if I take a couple pictures of your son? He's gotten so grown and I want to remember this." My mom obviously goes, "No, you're not going to do that," and shuts the driver door and locks the car, and we leave. As we leave, I can see Mike trying to take a photo through the windows of the car. A couple years later, when I was a bit older, my mom told me more details about Mike. My mom at the time was pretty high up in a company that pairs kids with adult mentors. Adults would apply to be paired with a kid. So my mom starts telling me about how one day they were going through the applications to be a mentor, and Mike's name had popped up. Apparently, someone else had interviewed Mike and recommended him for approval into the system. My mom, on the other hand, essentially vetoed it because she obviously had known Mike from these other experiences, and she got a weird vibe from him that something was off with him. So finally, we were watching the news at dinner one day a bit later, and they start sharing a story about a man who was arrested, and they show the mugshot of the man, Mike. The charge: thousands of inappropriate images and videos of children that he both had made and was just in possession of. He was actually caught by Border Patrol, as he was acting weird when he was trying to cross into Canada. So they decided to search his car and they found a bunch of it on his computer. They alerted US authorities, who then searched his house, and they found a ton more of it. I am 100% confident that he wanted to add me to the collection. If not for my mom having a great mother's instinct and the Canada-US border, it might have happened. Summer Camp Counselor Mike, let's not cross paths again.